If you want to know how to make a great tutorial for your game, keep watching.
We're going to use the Great Plateau of Breath of the Wild to show you exactly how your tutorial area can get your player completely ready for your game. Hello everyone, I'm Steel.
And I'm Teal.
And we're with Studio Blue.
Today we're going to teach you how to make a great tutorial using Breath of the Wild as an example.
That's right, we are here in VR chat in the Great Plateau world, which is a fantastic world by the way. We're going to walk you through this area and show you how Breath of the Wild does it right.
By doing this, we're going to give you a hands-on demonstration of developing your tutorial area.
So let's go ahead and get started. Now the area you're looking at right here is where Link wakes up. So you end up in a small isolated area. You can see that in this area all there is some beautiful graphics, some wonderful particle effects, but otherwise it's not a whole lot. This area boxes you in and forces you to come to this one point of interest.
So this is the device that you, the player character, have to pick up in order to advance through the story. It's the most prominent thing in the room, and you can easily just grab what you need.
The game draws your attention to the pedestal holding the Sheikah tablet on purpose. The game is already showing you that it's going to use objects like the pedestal in order to bring you towards points of interest and objectives relevant to the story. With the Sheikah tablet firmly in hand, we're able to advance. Now we can walk into the next area, which is slightly bigger.
One of the first things you're going to encounter is a treasure chest. You want to introduce objects like this to the player at the very beginning in your tutorial section so that they know what to look for throughout your game. You're teaching them that this object will give them loot. You're showing them what it looks like and showing them how to open it.
The more core the mechanic, the sooner that you want to introduce it to your players. So things like treasure chests and unlocking doors, those are things that the player is going to do throughout the entire game. And you want to get that stuff out as soon as possible. So introducing the unlocking mechanic with the Sheikah tablet and opening up a treasure chest to get loot or equipment or whatever is something that happened before you even leave the cave where the game begins.
So right here is where you're supposed to put your Sheikah tablet into this pedestal, allowing you to exit. This is a very intuitive construction. There's only one place in this whole area that you could put your Sheikah tablet, and you even have a voiceover telling you, hey, put the tablet here.
Hold the Sheikah slate up to the pedestal.
You want to make very clear instructions, both visual and perhaps auditory, letting your player know this is what you need to do next. This is how you exit this area.
Intuitive is the key word here. You want your player to be able to figure out exactly what to do with minimal exhibition and no struggling. If they have to work really hard to get out of your starting area and begin playing your game, you are not doing it right. Remember, intuitive, simple. That's how you start things.
Okay, so you'll notice there was an overlay, a bit of a tutorial on this is how you climb. It's best practices to teach one mechanic at a time. So for instance, we were just taught climbing and only climbing. Remember, you don't want to overload your player on throwing too many mechanics at them at once.
Teaching one mechanic at a time requires you to have one part of your tutorial area, even if it's just your starting area, per mechanic. Beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, and this is a perfect example of you being able to showcase the beauty of your world to the player at the very beginning, to draw them in and get them excited about the game they're about to play.
This is particularly true of open world games, but you can technically do it with any type of game at all. Even games that are restrictive in the areas that you're going to explore, you want to give them some sort of showcase. You want to let them know what they're in for. So by having this large, beautiful vista, you are showing your players, hey, look, this is a sampling of the world you're going to get.
This particular world we're in, the Breath of the Wild world, has a lot of different biomes, forest and desert and Arctic. You can have little representations of the different biomes that you're going to have. Or let's say it's an urban setting, so the different cities. Ideally, you want to give a small taste of the world to your player as soon as possible. Okay, let's move on and show you the next mechanic.
You're going to notice in this video that each of the areas teach exactly one mechanic. That's actually really important. The player gets a chance to learn everything before they leave. That is something that Breath of the Wild does extremely well.
Okay, so this game uses a glowing sparkle to draw the player's attention to an object. This is your first encounter with such a thing, and they happen to have a sparkle on a mushroom. Mushroom is important because that introduces the player to the cooking mechanic. It's under the general heading of crafting.
Now note that Teal said a cooking mechanic, but all we have right now is a raw mushroom. We are going to learn the other aspects of the cooking mechanic in just a few minutes. In fact, let's go see how we can combine two mechanics to start clearing obstacles.
Okay, now, in order to reach mushrooms, we have to climb this small little cliff.
So in the starting cave, we learned how to climb, and just now under the tree, we learned about food. Now both mechanics are being combined to show you exactly how to clear obstacles and reach objectives. You always want to have your player be able to combine mechanics, and you want to show them how to do it. So in this case, we're already getting the player used to combining one or more mechanics in order to accomplish their objectives.
Okay, now you've encountered your first NPC. Generally, you want to have your first encounters be informative. They should say a little bit about the world or themselves or the current situation. This is so very important to establishing your world as a living world, a dynamic world.
What is the current status quo? Remember, we always talk about that old status quo, shake up, new status quo. Well, the player needs to know what the old status quo is. So you have multiple options. You can either have a giant wall of text with a scroll talking about the state of the world, or you can have visual views like this wonderful vista and NPCs like this guy who basically gives you a quick snippet of information as to what the world currently is. And if you can do that and teach a mechanic at the same time, even better. Your tutorial area is doing things great.
Okay, so you're probably wondering why this fire is so big and so prominent. The reason is the fire is very important in this particular game world. Not only does it provide you warmth in exceedingly cold areas, but it's also used for cooking. You have to build a fire in order to cook, which is one of your mechanics. So there's a big focus right here, fire.
While for games like Breath of the Wild, this all falls under the umbrella of survival, you can use any grouping of mechanics you want to teach the basic outlying core mechanics of your game. So if one of your core mechanics of your game is crafting, then you can show mat gathering, combining workstations, tools that are needed for such things. And in doing so, you're teaching a large, complex mechanic through small, easy, digestible bites. So as you can see, we have taught both the cooking mechanics as well as given a summary of the world state in one simple location.
Okay, now we have a sparkle object that isn't food. This is a torch. The purpose of the torch is for lighting dark areas or lighting fires. It's convenient to have the torch located right here next to a roaring fire because then the player can go dip their torch in the fire and light it.
I'm not gonna lie, we didn't know if that was gonna work or not, so kudos to the person who designed this world.
Okay, yet another encounter with an object that's sparkling. Having the axe located next to the firewood and having it in a stump gives them the idea, I need to use an axe against trees. I need to chop trees for wood.
So this area teaches two different mechanics. Mechanic 1, you can light fires with torches. Mechanic 2, you can use axes to chop wood. Time and time again, the Great Plateau teaches the player mechanics in small, little, bite-sized chunks that end up adding up to the whole survival, exploration, and eventually fighting mechanics.
So here's a reward for exploring off the path right here. There's a circle of lily pads that appears to be underneath a cliff. Obviously, the player is encouraged to jump off the cliff and see if they can get into the circle of lily pads. This introduces a unique mini game, if you will, in this particular game. Here's another reward for exploring off the beaten path. There's a glowing object in the distance and it looks like a sword. In order to get to the sword, you're going to have to swim, a brand new mechanic, swimming in the water, jumping up onto the lower shelf, and then climbing up to the upper shelf to claim the sword.
Now you will notice that both of these sections are in water. This also introduces the first potential hazard of drowning. Once you're in the water, you have a very limited amount of time before you drown. Ergo, risk and reward. Do you try to get the sword, or do you bypass the sword? Do you want to risk drowning in order to get the reward? So early on, they're teaching you exactly how risk versus reward works, and you want to emulate that in your game. All right, so earlier we talked about how you can use people, NPCs, situations to teach the world state, aka the old status quo. Well, now we're going to show you how to give a heavier amount of exposition that's still in a digestible and non-boring telly way to teach world state and world lore at the same time, using one of the most iconic places in the Zelda series, the Temple of Time.
Because the temple is so large and it is an imposing edifice in the landscape, they're going to want to know, what is this building and what does it mean to me?
You want to do the same thing. If there's a landmark that you want your players to see, that you are trying to tell them, hey, this is probably a place you want to go to, making it big, making it imposing, and making it as grand as possible will direct them towards it. All right, let's go.
Wow, that is a big object. This is the player's first introduction to an enemy. This particular one is dead, it's inert, but it's showing you that there's some potential danger here. Later on, you're going to see these enemies walking around and shooting you with their laser eyes. For players who actually do climb on it, they'll get a little notification that this object is lootable. They'll be able to loot machine parts, and that will come into play later in the game with yet another crafting system mechanic. Okay, so taking a look at the architecture of this ruined temple, you're going to see that there is a triangle shape on the floor. This is the Triforce. This is a very important concept to the Legend of Zelda series. You're going to see pictures, stone relief, that sort of thing of the Triforce, just letting you know that it's here, it does exist. In the center of the temple is a giant statue of the goddess of this world, Hylia. In the game, your character, Link, will approach the statue and have a conversation and be introduced to another mechanic, the mechanic of the orbs.
So what they have effectively done is both given you some world lore by having the goddess Hylia talk to you, as well as teach you the mechanics of the orbs, which is something you're going to need for character self-improvement. Now Teal and I are going to show you how to start the critical path of this game, which is required for leaving this area. You can stay on the Great Plateau as long as you like, but there's one thing that you have to do in order to start the path of beginning this story.
Okay, here we have a pedestal that looks similar to the one that we encountered when we first woke up in that beginning area. It has a groove in there that is the exact same size and depth of your Sheikah tablet. So, obviously, you place your Sheikah tablet in there, and something will happen. So you just saw the entire sequence of the tower being activated. Another purpose that the tower serves is it gives you an entire vista. You get to see the lay of the land, and because your Sheikah tablet now has a map downloaded on it, you can compare the map on your Sheikah tablet to what you see.
And then finally, as we just saw, it shows us our ultimate enemy, Calamity Ganon appearing around Hyrule Castle. So regardless of whether or not this is an open world, you can use something like this tower to show your player a whole bunch of information relatively quickly so they can get on to the most important thing, which is playing your game.
Exactly.
All right, Teal, so now we need to look at the shrine. So are we going to do the easiest one or the hardest?
We're going hard mode, baby. We're going to go to the most difficult one, and we're going to show you how it's done. So here we are at the shrine. This is the first of several shrines. The whole object is to traverse your way to the entrance and go in. This, of course, is the hardest shrine of the tutorial area because there's a guardian there. Now, when you first approach it, you're like, hey, it's just one of those inert machines. But actually, spoiler alert, it's not. This will be your first encounter with a live guardian. Thankfully, this one is stationary, but this will teach you, this area teaches you how to block, how to move and dodge, and how to attack. Because you got to attack these things and defeat them.
Like Teal said, this is a completely stationary target. They want you to learn the basics of fighting these tough enemies before they become mobile, and that's something you as a developer should do. There's nothing wrong with having increasing challenges within your tutorial area. You just want to start off easier and then make it more difficult so that your players will get an idea of how hard the game can become. This is even in games that are Souls-like Dark Souls, for example, where even though you may have a boss that absolutely wrecks the enemy at the end of the tutorial level, the tutorial area itself still teaches things like the timing, dodging, parrying, etc., and then tests them with the boss fight. Well, this is no different. All right, so Teal, are you ready to go ahead and challenge this thing?
Sure, let me give it the old try. Oh! Oh shit! Okay, that thing actually does kill you.
Jeez on Pete.
Whoops!
Oh.
I was just taunting it, you know? I just thought maybe I could just play around with it, but it actually kills you.
Well, there is something important to learn from this, and that is the fact that hazards do exist, and by having the real threat of a game over and death, the player is going to learn, because you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes.
Yeah. Let's just move on, shall we? Let's just move on.
And never talk about this again?
Ever. Okay, to the shrine. Behind me is the shrine. You'll notice that it is mostly orange colored. You see the orange lights here and on the pedestal, and the top of the shrine is unlit. That means that this shrine is completely unactivated. You haven't interacted with it at all. Okay, now upon first activation, you'll see that the orange lights on the shrine have now turned blue. The top is lit, it's lit orange. This means that you found the shrine, you've activated it, but you have not gone through it.
So you can use these kind of techniques, sight, sound, etc., in order to clue the player in on exactly where they're at and what they need to do next.
Let's go into the shrine, okay? Woohoo! All shrines are going to be really big like this. The Great Plateau is going to contain a shrine of each type, so that you are prepared for these types of shrines when you get off the Great Plateau and enter the bigger world.
So the reason that this is that way is because in the Great Plateau, regardless of the order that you tackle the 4 shrines, you are going to learn each of the mechanics that are necessary to traverse and complete the rest of the game.
Now it's time to go talk to that sage and get our orb. Now that you're at the sage, this is the part where you get your reward for going through this entire shrine. All the work you did to get to the shrine, to solve its puzzle, or do whatever it is, fight its guardian, whatever it is you got to do. Okay, this is what awaits you at the end, getting that orb that Hylea told you to get. These orbs are important because these allow your character to grow.
I cannot stress this enough. It is very important that early on in the game, specifically in your tutorial area, you need to show them exactly what the rewards are for completing whatever puzzles, challenges, etc. that you have. In this instance, for each of these 4 shrines, they're going to get something that can be used to improve their character. That is one of the main features of this game. In the Zelda series, things like heart containers and later on stamina bars and even attack power are things that you get over the course of the game and are the rewards for the different challenges you overcome. Because it's such an important mechanic, the game right away is making sure you know that when you complete something, this is the kind of reward that you're going to expect.
The sage in every shrine has a different pose. The pose of the sage is indicative of the type of trial that you had to go through. You see, this sage in particular has their hands in a triangle in the Triforce pose.
These are all fantastic little bits of world detail, things that you want to do. Because remember, no matter how much you are creating the challenges, the mechanics, no matter how much you're teaching, you still want the player to be able to enjoy both the beauty of your world and the lore of your world. So in this particular instance, these little tidbits just add extra life to the world. So do that. Remember, while you're balancing, while you're creating, while you're developing, don't forget you are creating an immersive experience. UX is king. UX is always king.
Now that we've teleported back outside, look up at the shrine. It's all blue. This shows the player that you've done the shrine. It's completed.
So then again, one more time to reiterate, every single mechanic that you're going to use in Breath of the Wild, you learn in the Great Plateau. You can learn them in any order, you can learn them at your leisure. You get a chance to explore this beautiful world, see the beautiful world beyond that you're going to experience, learn all of the mechanics in a way that you can feel comfortable learning, and when you are ready, and only when you are ready, do you exit the Great Plateau and see the wider great world of Hyrule.
Okay, so to exit the Great Plateau, you are given one final mechanic. Gliding.
That's right, the infamous paraglider that is in like every single commercial, playthrough, etc. You get it at the very end of the Great Plateau. It's almost like it's a reward for finishing the tutorial.
So are you ready to go flying?
What the fuck?
YOLO!
YOLO. Well, that was fun.
Whoops.
Are we ready to end this?
Yes.
All right. So the main takeaways of your tutorial area are teach every mechanic, show the expanse of the world, give the player the beginning of their experience, and most importantly, make them want to play the entirety of your game. If you make your tutorial area something that gives the UX from the very beginning, you're going to draw your player in, hook them, and they're going to play the whole game.
Of course, the most important thing is to make it fun for the player. So everything that you do, everything you design and develop, everything you teach, it all needs to be fun for the player.
We want to thank you guys for joining us. This is a new formula for us where we use a VR chat world to teach you an aspect of game development.
So leave your thoughts in our comments, what you liked about it, what you didn't like, any suggestions for improvement, etc. We'll take your feedback and incorporate it into future videos so that we can make things that you enjoy learning.
So join us next time, and we love you all. And if you like what you saw, lay the smack down like button below, subscribe to our channel, consider supporting us on Patreon, connect with us over social media, and we will see you in the next video.
See you next time.